talking about tonight and just ask some questions, and we're just going to have a little back and forth because that's a good way to learn. But I will tell you guys something about life is you kind of get what you give. And I meant to mention this earlier, but there's two folks sitting in this room right now because I went into the community and gave time to the school. And I appreciate you guys being here tonight for that. But it was really funny. I think your daughter had actually said to me, my dad and mom need to meet you. And then I met them. So don't ever think that if you give something out, give of your time, your money, your energy, whatever, that something good is going to come of that. And I always like to tell folks, Brandon drove all the way down from Johnson City tonight. It wasn't an easy trip for him, traffic, whatever. And we're not paying these guys anything, But Brian's got a lot of knowledge. So Brian, come up here just a minute. I've heard his story. This is one I would ask that you kind of keep your questions kind of to the end. But Brian has he saw an opportunity. He made a move toward it. He did all the due diligence because everybody's questions tonight, I think, hinge on due diligence. Most people don't spend enough time thinking about the what ifs, the things that could go wrong. Good question you asked a while ago. Is the Smoky Mountain area saturated? Yes and no. On a level of, if you've got a property that looks like me and Justin walked some of them, and it looks like you stepped back into like 2006, yes, you have a problem. But if you buy something newer or just do something that's different. One of my friends, Madeline, she put her one-bedroom property on Facebook the other day and said it made $15,000 last month. I'm like, what did she do? And I started looking at it. And I started seeing her pictures, and I'm like, oh, I get it. She's gone the extra mile for the guest experience. But Brian's going to talk to you a little bit about numbers. He's a numbers guy. He's also somebody who's good with numbers. You're not a CPA, but you are. You do whatever. He teaches at the university. Yeah. I won't steal his thunder, but this guy, just like I said, if you got questions, let him talk, and then at the end of it, because I'm going to go through a few things, I'm going to ask him some questions myself, and at any point during that time, it'll be a good opportunity for us to kind of talk, because I want him to be able to share as much as he can. Brian could talk for 4 or 5 hours, and you would be just as engaged if he's talked for 5 minutes. So without further ado, Brian Cataldi, appreciate you coming tonight, brother.
Awesome. Thanks. Hey, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, I'm Brian. Great to be here. Honored to be here, honestly. Really haven't spoken to a large group panel before, so this is the first one for me. Not sure where to start. I'm just going to kind of tell you the story, right? My background, I was a CPA, so I've got that in my background. Graduated from the University of Iowa and then took a CPA job. Worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers for a while on the tax side and did some stuff like that. And what I learned, this will all lead to a place. What I learned real quick was I don't want to do that, right? I don't want to work for 60, 70 hours a week for somebody else. And I watched kind of what was going on above me, and those guys were, millionaires, and they were doing really, really well. They also had no time. Most of them were divorced, and they looked like they were, 80 when they were 50 years old. I grew up with a dad who, and he had time, and he was an entrepreneur, and I kind of knew that's where I wanted to be. And then I wind up being a CPA, and I get a tax return in front of me that shows me a roadmap of how all these high net worth individuals are making money, and every one of them had real estate in it. Every darn one of them, right? So that was kind of the first bell going off. Maybe I need to be doing something in that space, the entrepreneurial space. And then, of course, I'm 22 years old, and I'm trying to figure out my life. And we didn't have TikTok and YouTube and all that stuff back then. We had, talk to people, right? And so it took a while to kind of figure out how am I going to get to where I wanted to go. Driven race cars forever, grew up with Danica Patrick and race cars with her. And anyway, so that was kind of my background. I was like, man, I want to be done with this CPA thing. So I got some experience for a while and then went and started my own company and built a business around the race car stuff for a long time. Did that till about 2008. If any of you in this room remember 2008, that was not a happy time in the world. And specifically when it came to race car stuff, driven by disposable income, obviously that world started to falter a little bit. And I was like, all right, this isn't going to work long term. I'm not sure what I want to do. But I know I don't want to be a CPA, so I'm going to go back and get my MBA and hopefully have some flexibility in what I'll do next. Well, in that process, I wind up start teaching. Teach a little bit at a community college, enjoyed it. I was like, all right, how do I do this and make any money at it? Well, the PhD world, that's what you had to do, go get a PhD, which was great, piled higher and deeper. So I went down to Carbondale and got my PhD for 4 years in accounting, and then jumped off into the university world. So I worked in Indianapolis at Butler University for about 4 years. That was from 2015 to 19, somewhere in there. And this is about where the story begins, right? So I go up for tenure, and if you don't know how that works in that world, if you get tenure, you get a job for life. And it's a pretty good gig. Like the accounting world, as a professor, you get paid well into the six figures. You got summer off. You got a pretty good benefits package. Life is not bad, and that gave me the ability and flexibility. My plan was to get tenure, have some protection, and then jump off and start doing something in the entrepreneurial space again, right? Well, my world comes crashing down in 2019. So, end of 2019, I'm supposed to get tenure. All indications are you're going to get this. You're going to get this deal. My boss is happy. My performance reviews are good. I'm decent at teaching and all the things. And it's academia. So you go into a room filled with your peers, a committee of 5 to 6 people, and behind closed doors, they make some decisions. And as you can tell, I am not a three-piece suit guy. I am a pretty blue-collar dude that grew up racing cars and working with my hands and doing that kind of stuff. And I did not fit in with the academic PhD world at all. And so in that meeting, come to find out a lot of things later, but my boss, and I was pretty good friends with him, he takes me out to dinner and he's like, I got to tell you something, and I'm so disappointed, but this is what's going to be. I didn't get tenure. And the way that works is, if you don't get tenure, not only do you not get a job for life, you get escorted to the door within a year. Well, this is at the end of 2019, right? This is right about December. And then I'll be really vulnerable with you guys and tell you kind of the rest of this story. So that night, my friends are like, come out with us. This is a mess. I can't believe this, right? So I got out with my friends. We go to a Mexican restaurant. We have some margaritas. I don't have much. I think I had like 2. And then I leave to go to another bar. And it's like, you know what? I'm just going to go home. I've had enough for the night. I'm kind of ticked off at the world right now. And I get pulled over coming out of there. So get a DUI that night at .095 or something. It was pretty low, but I get a DUI. So now I don't have a job. I don't know this is about to happen, but COVID is on the horizon. Academia is about to get shut down, and we're going to go on hiring freeze for the next 2 years. And I have the ability to not only, if I did get a job, I now have to check a box that says, oh, by the way, I got this thing going on, right? So I actually was in process at Belmont University, took a job with them, was ready to go, had a job offer, disclosed this to one of my friends who's in the hiring committee. He says, no big deal, shouldn't be a problem. We get to the point of the offer. Now COVID has officially started. It's in March of 2020, and they're looking for ways to get out because everybody's like real nervous about what's going to happen for the next couple of years, right? And so they take that opportunity and say, you know what, we're just going to back off on this, and we're not going to give you that job offer after all. So I lose a job offer. And then COVID has now officially begun. All the jobs that were there just went, they're gone. I mean, literally it went from about 150 jobs out there across the United States to 2 to 3. Of course, they're in places I didn't want to be. So I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. My parents were down here. They lived in Knoxville. And I'd known for a long time, just probably like a lot of you sitting in this room. I'd listened to Bigger Pockets. I'd done all the things. I kind of wanted to do something in the real estate space. Didn't know what it would be. And I got a pretty good kick in the pants to say, we got to figure something out, right? And so I did. I talked to my dad while we were down here, and I said, I think this is what I want to do. He's kind of a self-made guy. He's an entrepreneur, multimillionaire, built himself up from nothing. They came from nothing. And he grew up in that kind of old school world where, I hired a contractor, and the contractor wanted to charge us X, so we couldn't do that. We couldn't afford it, so he wound up doing everything himself, right? So he's one of those guys. So he knew quite a bit about houses, and I wanted to be able to pick his brain before it got too late to the point where I wouldn't be able to do that anymore. So he said, all right, if you want to do this real estate thing, we'll help you. So I sold my house, made a transition year. They give you a year to work. So for a year, we bought a house down here in Oak Ridge, and that was kind of my first foray into real estate. I was like, all right, I'm going to buy a house, and we're going to fix this thing up together, and I'm going to learn kind of the ropes of how to do this, right? So I bought a house in Oak Ridge, and plan was, at that point, going to buy a house, turn it, not flip it, keep it, live in the basement, rent out the top, and then eventually get to the point where it's a long-term rental, move on to the next deal, and just keep doing this until I can figure out what the next step is. At least we can live for free, and if I got to pick up a job as a bartender or whatever, I'll do it, right? That was the plan. So start working on that house. We did it together, me and my dad. It was a mess, kind of a hoarder house. You'll find a theme here. Everything I buy has been a mess for the most part. My dad's like, this is a decent one, you know. I mean, it looks worse than it is. I think we can do this. So he was kind of my wingman at that point. We did this family thing, right? So I would drive from Indianapolis 3 days a week. I'd work up there Monday, Wednesday, basically, and then I'd drive back from Indianapolis, Butler, down here, and work on the house pretty much to the end of the week. Turn around on Sunday night, go back up there. I did that for about a year. We get that one done. The academic year's about over at this point. I come down here full time and get a contract on a triplex. And was going to do that. And I started kind of penciling out how many doors it was going to take on a long-term rental scheme to get to where I needed to go. And I was like, man, this is a lot, right? This is a lot, even back then. So I met a guy. Happened to go to a real estate meetup, just flat out looked it up on Bigger Pockets one night. Was like, what is this real estate meetup in Knoxville? Meet Tyrell there actually that night. And Derek Tellier was a guy. Derek's working with a short-term shop, which was out of that Smoky Mountain region. And they're talking about cabins, and they're talking about Airbnbs. Well, at this point, you got to step back 5 years ago. Airbnbs were not exactly the thing they are now. My opinion of Airbnb was, oh my God, parties. Oh my God, they're going to trash the place. Cities don't want us. I want nothing to do with this, right? But he's talking about the numbers on these things, and I'm under contract. At that point, you could get a one-bedroom for like $250 to $300. I was looking at one-bedroom stuff, one to two-bedroom stuff. Can't do that now. Could then. And I was under contract on a triplex for about $300,000. I was looking at the numbers, and it was $55,000 revenue over here versus about $300,000 or $36,000 revenue over here, right? So I'm like, what are we doing? If I'm going to deploy this capital, let's deploy it over here. So I get out of contract on the triplex, wind up trying to work with Derek to get a cabin. We get our first cabin. It's a remodel, of course. It wasn't the worst. It was a long-term rental, but it was the best of the ones that we've started with, by far. And I said, all right, let's do the same thing. So me and Dad are going to go in and we're going to redo this thing. So we did, and Dad's like, that's it. After this one, you get a contractor, you're on your own. So all right, that's fine. We redo this one together, and then Derek brings me a deal. Says, I've got something. Nobody wants it. I don't know if you'd want to look at this or not. And it was $1 million deal for 7 cabins, all at once. And they were long-term rented, and they were an absolute nightmare. And to the point where I couldn't even get into them because they still had tenants in them, but the tenants weren't paying rent anymore. I mean, you can imagine what these things look like, right? So the guy who's the seller, he's like, all right, I'm going to let you go into one because that one's vacant. Well, lo and behold, that one happens to be the best one, right? So I get in that one, and I'm like, oh, man, we can deal with this. This is just a remodel, right? At this point, I don't know anything about real estate, right? I know enough to I've learned enough about construction to be able to kind of remodel stuff, but I don't know enough to really be like, this is, to see all the pitfalls of what could have been in that type of a project. In fact, if I know what I knew now, I probably would have talked myself right out of that deal, right? And my dad's like, you're insane. But if you want to do this, we'll help you, right? That project was interesting. It was 7 cabins. They're all very, very small. They were like 450 square feet small, like very small. There was about 6 of them at the top of the mountain. There was one at the bottom of the mountain, right next to another friend of ours' cabin. And so I kind of used hers as like a comparable, right? And I was like, okay, this thing's right over here. It's making about this. I knew roughly how to analyze a deal. I was on the CPA, right? So I kind of knew the numbers on this are going to be decent. I've just got to get through this front-end piece. It's just remodeling houses. This isn't that big of a deal, right? Well, it was that big of a deal, but that's all right. We got through it. So I took off down the road with this thing and started to kind of work on that. And at that point, I had a contractor. The contractor winds up helping me on the first one. He does what he does. Now, there's the backstory on that. He was recommended to me by a few different guys. Of course, this is 2020. This is COVID, right? And things are just starting to kind of explode in Gatlinburg because, as she mentioned, the world shut down. And nobody can go anywhere, but Gatlinburg is wide open. Come on down, right? We're open for business. And so, we were getting international travel. We were getting stuff that I've never seen since, right? So you had a ton of people converging in that area, and therefore it was also becoming kind of this word of mouth, bigger pockets, spread like wildfire thing going on at the same time. And so people start converging from California and everywhere else to buy properties. Not only buy properties, but developers are now saying, we can get in here and start building properties, right? And so this is all starting to take off at the same time. So my contractor lost his crew to a developer. I didn't know this. So he's in way over his head because now he's got to find people to sub this thing out. And of course, he finds people. He's a Hispanic guy. He finds people from, Honduras. They come in. They probably didn't know exactly what they were doing. We figured that out pretty quick. So we get through the first project, and the plan was for me, I was going to flip one at the bottom. I knew if I flipped the one at the bottom, I was going to use the cash proceeds from that to be able to kind of carry the holding costs. I had enough in the bank, we thought, to be able to do the remodel project. That was kind of how I thought this was going to work, right? And then, by the way, we're now renting the other one. We're now doing the short-term rent on the other one, the first one that we started. And so we get through that first one that's going to be a flip, and I'm down there looking at it, and I'm like, Dad, I know it barely enough to be dangerous at this point. I'm like, Dad, we got problems. Like, this ain't going to work, right? Dad comes down, he's like, oh, no. So we got to fix in basically a couple of weeks all the things that they mess up, right? It's my first indication this is probably not going to work out with this contractor. My dad, of course, is like, nope, I'm not doing it. So, all right. So we start renting that one. I'm going to rent it probably to the end of the year. I'll flip it later. Let's get some cash flow while we're now fixing the ones at the top. So we embark on the project at the top. Now, I saw cabins to remodel. Everybody does. What I didn't see was infrastructure problems. What I didn't see was road problems. What I didn't see was retaining walls everywhere that needed to be rebuilt. I didn't see all the things that I will now walk into a deal and never not see, right? But at that point, I didn't know. Of course, my dad is like, we didn't have an inspection because, really, to be honest with you, there wasn't much to inspect. These things were that much of a mess. And so we get up there, the contractor starts working. It became very apparent very quickly. I'm looking at cash burn rate. I'm looking at percentage of completion of where we're at, and I'm like, we're running out of money. Like, I've got everything that I own into this deal. Like, here it is. This is all we got, right? And I'm like, there's only a limited pile here, and at that point, it's over. And got to get through this somehow, some way. So I end up firing the contractor and saying, that's it. We're actually still pretty good friends. He's done some stuff for me since. He's gotten a little better along the way. Got a little better crew as time has gone on. But I still work with him a little bit. And I tell my dad, I'm like, we got to do this. Period. I got to do this, right? He's like, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know. I'm going to move into them. So I literally packed up, moved my stuff into one of those cabins up there and said, I'm going to live in each one of these things and redo it until we get to the point where we can move into the next one, right? So the way it worked was I'd work on one. We'd get a kitchen and a bathroom in it, and that would kind of work, or get this one pretty much done. Get to the point where we get a kitchen and a bathroom in the next one. Get out of that one, move to the next one. And we just did this and did this and did this. That's pretty much how I did it. My dad was like, all right, well, I can't let you fail. I'm not going to do that. You're my kid. So I'm coming up. So he would, I got a badass dad, right? So he decides at 75 years old, you're going to pull me, 72 years old, you're going to pull me out of retirement again. This is great. Can't wait for this. He drives from Von Orr, Tennessee, if you know where that is, out to Gatlinburg 3 days a week, hour and a half each way, and we are now officially father-son partner. And oh, by the way, I also, at this point, have now found a job because I'm like, man, I need to do something. These things aren't making any money. The stuff that is getting made is getting poured right back into the cabins. So I find a job, and the closest one I can find is Western Carolina University. So I got to drive over the mountain every day, teach for 2 hours, or drive 2 hours, teach, drive back, and then the rest of my time is spent basically remodeling these cabins, right? So I pretty much lived and breathed it for 4 years. It took about 3.5 years to get through that project. Get to the point where we could rent 4 of the one-bedrooms. So the way it worked was we had 4 one-bedroom cabins pretty much right next to each other, and then there were 2 that had a loft in them. Small one-bedrooms with a loft. Real small, 450, 500, 600 square feet. We got the 4 one-bedrooms done, sent them live in the beginning of 24, and then I had a couple left to do. And the ones with the loft, everybody said, make it a 2-bedroom, make it a 2-bedroom, make it a 2-bedroom, right? Well, this is kind of one of your points. How do you hedge risk in some of this stuff? Now, I looked at the bedroom counts and what was going on inside the market. I've now seen this market for 5 years, and the only constant inside of this market is it's changed every year for the last 5 years, right? That's the only constant.
Mm-hmm.
And the bedroom counts, what I learned real quick, or what I saw happening quickly, was builders, developers, they can make a lot of money sticking another floor on something and just adding bedrooms in them, right? Infrastructure's already there. All the sunk costs are already there. Stick another floor on this thing, there's not much but walls, and we stick a bathroom in, right? So they were building the biggest properties they could, 4, 5, 6 bedroom count. And everybody entered the market with the old opinion of more heads and beds, more heads and beds, more heads and beds. So 2 bedroom count on up was the one where it started to get really saturated. I could just see the writing on the wall. I'm like, they're building these things left and right. Everybody's entering the market at that point in that space. I want to run as far away from that as I can, right? So I ran to the 1 bedroom space, and that's where I've stayed. We've actually taken a couple of 2 bedroom properties that I own and have made them 1 bedrooms and done better as a result. So I've tried to stay kind of down there, away from the fray. So those 2 properties that had a loft, we wound up adding a movie theater up there, small movie theater, a couple's movie theater, like a cool little, thing with a couple of beanbag chairs. And man, those things do awesome as a result because it's an amenity nobody has, and it's kind of a unique thing that people want, right? So I tried to look for ways to differentiate along the way. Everybody's like, how'd you come up with your design ideas? I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't know anything about this stuff. We looked at Instagram posts, and I was like, hey, that looks cool. I was at a coffee shop one time. They had swings there. And swings were like, these slabs of just live edge wood that they had hung. I put swings at all the properties. We tried to do as much that would be unique and cool as I could. I had a really, really great view of Mount LeConte up there at the property. I built a massive viewing tower. It's a deck that's elevated like 12 feet off the ground, right? But I called it the viewing tower. I put, a bunch of lights on it. It says cabins on it that's lit up, and at night this thing lights up and shines. It's a big focal point. I put a big swinging, chair underneath it, big swing underneath it. People go and they take pictures, and they have Instagram posts, and everybody loves that thing. It's a community thing, right? So try to do as much stuff like that to make them unique and cool as we could. They are positioned not as, I don't have log furniture. I don't have bears on the walls. I don't have kitschy little stuff. Yeah.
I would say with just the properties I've insured, the ones that do what we say with the uniqueness that others don't.
It's huge.
I'm seeing them have higher revenue than some of their bigger properties.
Yeah.
Something unique, like you said, the pictures that people would say. I have a lady who has a green fake bear shrub. It's called the green bear cabin. Just that alone with the bench where the families take pictures, they share it on Facebook. Once she put that in there, she said her book tripled.
Yeah. It's huge. I mean, I got this huge, what better backdrop than Mount LeConte sitting there. Mm-hmm. Somebody's taking a picture, a selfie with them, and of course that stuff grows like wildfire, right? So anyway, yeah, we did a lot of unique stuff like that where I tried to make them kind of cool and different. We painted the interiors. At the time, nobody was painting interiors. We tried to do a mix of wood and modern. They're modern more than they are rustic by any means. And they've done well, right? Give you an idea, last year they did about, on average, across my portfolio, $65,000 in revenue, which is pretty darn solid for 1-bedroom cabins, especially small 1-bedroom cabins in that area. I had one do as much as $85,000. We had an $84,000 cabin last year, and it doesn't have anything. I mean, it's got a view, a little bit of a view, but nothing crazy. Done pretty darn well, right? Now, the way I bought them, because I bought stuff that everybody didn't want, it takes me a whopping $833. I did the math while I was sitting over there. $833 a month is the carrying cost, PITI, on the property. All in, utilities, $1,100. Yet they're making roughly $5,500, right? So they're doing very, very well. Now, I shifted a bunch of risk. A lot of people at the time were buying the nice, built, redone property on the front end. They were overpaying for it. And as a result, the carrying cost associated with that is significantly higher, right? I just shifted risk and said, I don't want to be in a position where we have risk down the road. I want to be able to hedge that because I don't know what's coming in this market. But I shifted the risk to, we got to go through this remodel thing on the front end. And it was rough. Like, it was so bad at times I blocked out pieces of it. Like, it was real rough. So anyway, we get the 4 done, send them live. They've done pretty well. And then there's another story, right? So the first one that I bought, so both of my complexes, I have 9 of them. 6 here. The other 3 are kind of right together, right in between Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. So in Pigeon Forge and then 3 together there. And so when I'm working on the first one, that was around in between Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, this old lady keeps coming down. She's like 82 years old. She keeps coming down talking to us to the point where we can't even get things done. And my dad's like, this woman is going to drive me insane, right? She's just lonely. She's up on the side of a mountain. It's me and another cabin. That's it. She just come down and talk to us all the time. And she comes down one day and she says, I got to get rid of this thing. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep doing this. What do you want? What do you want for it, right? So we hashed out a deal to buy this thing. Now, her property was really unique. It was a 2-bedroom property, and, of course, she was a hoarder. So, I mean, I couldn't, when I would walk into it, it was like literally out of hoarders. Like, there was a path to get to the bedroom. There was a path to get to the bathroom. I couldn't even get in the basement. I'd have to, climb over stuff to be able to do it. It was bad. But that property was a 2-bedroom with a garage, and then it also had a detached ADU. And that ADU is an office. That's what they were using it as. Had a bathroom in it. Wasn't anything exciting. About 15 by 15, maybe 225 square feet. Really, really small. And so I said, okay, here's the deal. She's like, but I need to be able to live in it until this, but I need to get the deal done before that. And so it was a nightmare. She had a drug addict son. The drug addict son would show up. It was like a Springer episode. It was nuts. We had to get the church involved. We had to get the city involved to try to get all of her stuff out of there. We finally do. Get her moved. She doesn't have a whole lot of family. Her family was like, we can't. We've tried. We can't deal with her. So it's pretty much on me, right? We get that deal done, and I'm like, here's the deal. You can stay in it to the end of the year, which was probably a terrible idea. It was the only way I could make it happen. And I said, but you got to give me that ADU, all right? So we get in the ADU, and me and Dad start redoing that thing. And, just a small little 225 square foot deal, right? Well, side story real quick. While I didn't have a contractor, I meet a guy. The guy that comes up to me, his name's Cam, winds up becoming kind of my right-hand man. We didn't know that at the time. He comes up to me and he says, hey, boss man. He had taken some trees down for me or something. He calls me boss man. And he's like, hey, boss man, I want to take you out to dinner. I was like, you're going to take me out to dinner? Yeah, let's go to Bluffs. All right. So we go to Bluffs, get something to eat. And he's a factory worker at the time. And he's like, I want to do this. I want to do this full time. I want to do, well, what do you mean you want to do this? What is this, right? He's like, I don't know. Anything outside, that's what I want to do. Okay. Usually at this point, I start talking people out of stuff, right? Because I'm like, usually when they come to me and they say stuff like this, they're in no position financially. They're in no position in their life to be able to do something like this. This guy was like, I've sold everything. I got a bunch of cash in my pocket. I just went and bought an excavator yesterday. I was like, you got an excavator. You literally bought one. Yeah, brand new. Got a brand new excavator. I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm living in the basement of my sister's house, and I want to do this. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? Just fired this contractor. I've got some room in the budget now because we're going to do this ourselves, and I got a bunch of stuff that I didn't know about. Retaining walls, fire pits, all this stuff outside that I couldn't quite figure out, right? So I'm like, I can keep you busy for a year. So he comes and starts working with me. This guy winds up being awesome, right? He doesn't know how to do anything. I don't know how to do anything. So together, we figure this out. Like, for example, one night, this is how my nights would go because this was what I was living and breathing for like 3.5 years, right? I would wake up in the middle of the night, every night, thinking about water heaters or some other damn thing. And this time we had to build fire pits. And our plan was big steep grade in the back of the mountain. I'm like, let's just build them out, build a retaining wall here, and this is how we'll do it. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, man, that seems just awkward. And I'm not, you have to build a privacy fence here, and they're going to see over the private. I don't want to do all that stuff. So let's carve it into the mountain, right? He's like, boss man, I don't know how to do that. And I was like, well, I think, we can figure it out. And so I kind of gave him some sketches, and he's thinking about it. He would go home and YouTube stuff. He would YouTube how to do all this, right? Together, we wind up carving these fire pits into the mountain, which wind up looking really, really cool. Now we step down into the fire pit. It's built into the ground, got retaining wall around it. And now they've got privacy fences over here, and you're set down. You can't see over into the next one because they're all situated somewhat close to each other. So that was just kind of the guy he was. He winds up building the viewing tower for me. Now he can do complete remodels. I mean, the guy has come so far. and he's my dude. And so like we get through that. Now he's got a portfolio. It's a really cool story. He's got a portfolio of work that he's done. And I've now been able to farm him out to people. I kind of strategically tried to grow his business the right way instead of just spamming him and killing him. Put you with the right people along the way, and he's now developed a really, really good business for himself. Bought another excavator, got a couple guys that work for him, and he can do pretty much anything. Really, really neat stuff. So he comes over and says, hey man, how about we build he's got ideas, right? He's like, how about we build like a covered deck out here off of this thing, and then we'll build a fire pit up here, and this is how I think we should do it. And I was like, yes. Get it done. So we built a really cool outdoor space for this 225 square foot office. Literally office, right? Now it's got a covered deck. It's got a hot tub. In fact, I dragged him down to Chattanooga. We picked up a used hot tub for like $500 and trailered it back because that's the kind of stuff we were doing because I don't have any money, right? It was like we got a limited pile. So he puts it into place. We build fire pit, do what we got to do. Me and Dad remodel the inside. And the way that the inside worked, it had a space, closet in the back, bathroom. We built a kitchenette into this thing. Didn't have a real, full kitchen, but it had a kitchenette, stove cooktop, refrigerator. Built a breakfast bar. Everything I did had a breakfast bar in it because we didn't have any space. So it was like, this is where you can eat. We got a couple's cabin, right? So I would weld those things together, literally. We'd go down to Everhart Lumber in Tellico Plains, grab some live edge wood, make the thing, right? That's how we did a lot of our stuff. And then I was like, we're going to sleep them because we don't have enough space in the floor to do this. We kind of looked up and I was like, we could build a loft above that bedroom, and so above that bathroom. So we did. So now this becomes you climb a ladder and get into a queen bed that's a half loft, I guess. And then I put this is the first foray into the movie thing, but I was like, maybe, I'll put a projector there. We'll put a screen up on the wall, and this would be kind of cool. You can lay in bed and you can watch movies, and this would be a neat picture. We'll have, Netflix up there. And so we did some stuff like that in that place. And I was like, all right, I think this is going to be a cool little place. I don't know what it'll do. Everybody said, man, it's too small. You got to climb a ladder. Nobody's going to want to do that. It'll do maybe 30 to 40 grand if you're lucky. First year out of the gate did 58,000, which was enough. By the time you take out the expenses and all the things, it was enough to pay for the entire property, right? And it's done consistently now, 58, 55, and 53. So it's consistently been right in that ballpark. That gave me some time to go back and finish the rest of the project at Ridgetop, which we did because life happens. And at this point, I'm working a job, and my dad had to have quadruple bypass surgery in there, and all sorts of stuff happens, right? So we get through it. We go back. We have the last one. That happens this year, which was the main cabin, the 2-bedroom with the garage that was part of this ADU. So did that one last. Most people would take that and say immediately, that's a 2-bedroom, and you've got a garage, so let's make it a 3rd. And of course, me said, I'm marching the other way, right? And so I went 1-bedroom, 2,200 square foot 1-bedroom, pretty big, right? But it's got amenities forever. I've got a game room in the basement. I've got a massive movie theater in it. We locked off the garage. I may do something with that later. We just wanted to get it kind of going for now. So now the garage is just storage for me. Upstairs is kind of cabin. Downstairs is kind of entertainment. So it's like a mullet situation there. My contractor said, you know what, man? I said, I think we're going to run out of money on this one. Because the way that I financed it on that deal was I flipped the one that we finally were going to flip at the bottom of that first deal. We flipped it, and I 1031 exchanged it into this deal, so I was into it for nothing cash-wise, and then deferred all the taxes on top of it, which was pretty awesome. So that actually gave me the down payment and the rehab budget. I didn't have any more money. Like, we were about out, right? So I think that gave me about a $100,000 rehab budget to do both the ADU and the hoarder house, which doing it myself, even still, was tough to pull off. I think we can get this done for that. And I was like, seriously? So me and Dad kind of redid the stuff on the inside. We were getting to the point where I was like, we're not going to have enough money here. And he's like, boss man, don't worry about it. You've helped me out enough. So he winds up coming in and just does the outside. Builds a huge fire pit, does everything for me, and just says, pay for the materials. We'll call it good. You've helped me out, man. So really cool story there because it winds up I've built his business with him. Now, by the way, his sister and his wife wind up saying, hey, I think I might want to clean. And everybody wants my cabins to clean, right? Because They take literally 30 to 45 minutes to get through these things, and they are here, 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 and here. They don't have to drive anywhere. They come out of one, they go to the next one, right? Everybody wants them. So I'm like, man, I don't know. The cleaning's a big deal. If you've never done short-term rentals, this is a huge deal. And the life cycle of a cleaner kind of goes like this. They start out awesome, and then because they're awesome, everybody wants them. And because that happens, then they have to be a business owner. And now all of a sudden they have to hire people, and they are not business owners, they are cleaners, right? And so eventually that goes like this, and it tanks. And so I was like, man, I said, this is a really big deal. You know, if people walk in and it doesn't work, it's over. Like, if it's not clean, I can never recover from this thing. So I'm not sure I want to do this. So we start out, we're running 2 sets of cleaners. This pisses off the other group of cleaners, obviously. And at some point they go, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore because I don't know what you got going on with this. I'm like, fine. So we let them go. And I'm like, I'm all in with these guys. So now my contractor's sister and wife are now my cleaners, and they're awesome. They've been great. I've helped grow their business, and we've done it the same way, right? Now I've got them strategically with the right people. Stay away from the large stuff. Stick with the small stuff. 2 top tables that we can just turn over left and right, right? I ran about 92, 93% occupancy last year. We stay pretty booked all the time. This year's been tougher. Last year, everybody said was tough, tough, tough. I felt like we did fine. Our numbers were actually the highest I've ever had. This year, when the tariff stuff came out specifically around March and April, I saw a pretty big struggle to kind of make things happen. We've slowly kind of come back. That said, the rates are not where they were last year by far. But I still think we're on track to do, if you ask me, I bet we'll average somewhere around 62 to 63 by the end of the year. This year, across a portfolio of 9 properties, my profit margins, because of the way I bought them and because of the way I did it, run about 50%. So if I'm 60-some thousand on a property, I'm putting in my pocket cash flow 50% of that. That's pretty tough to make happen anymore, but that is how we did it because I bought stuff for $140,000 and then sweat equity my way into it. A portfolio at this point, I tried to add it up over there. We're somewhere between $3.5 and $4 million bucks. I owe about $1.4 million. Most of that is sweat equity that was built in from me doing what we did, right? I bought the main deal for $1 million bucks. It was actually $975. We then spun off one of the cabins. I sold that thing for about $400,000, $350, $375, $375 I think it was, which eliminated a lot of that mortgage. So we're down to like a $600 and some thousand mortgage on that deal. I 1031 into one property. I think we've got about a $325,000 mortgage, roughly, let's say, on that. And then I got a $250,000-ish mortgage on the first one. I did a commercial deal on the portfolio of properties because I had to, and quite frankly, they should never have given me that loan. It should never have happened. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Yeah, so here's the reason it worked, right? So I brought a ton of cash to the table. I was like, I have no options. I can't get a job. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to pour myself into something. So this is what we're going to do. And so I brought a ton of cash to the deal. And then also, unbeknownst to me, this is kind of the Gatlinburg stuff that you don't know going on behind the scenes. The guy that was selling it was a pretty big individual in Sevierville. He had done a lot of development stuff. And he was trying to sell that portion off so that he could develop and buy another deal, right? Of course, the bank was going to get that deal, and that was a much bigger deal than my deal was, right? And so they were like, the only way that this domino happens is if we give this guy who's never done this before a shot. And they were like, that's fine because you're bringing so much cash to the table that we'll just take it all along with your property if you don't make this work, right? Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much how that happened. Unbeknownst, by the way, a couple of things happened that I kind of glossed over. One of the biggest was, while I was doing this project, he then sells, the guy that I bought it from, then sells the rest of the mountain. So there was 6 up top. This thing was a pre-developed plan, a PUD, if you know what that is, planned unit development, for multiple cabins along the rest of the mountain going down. He then sells that shovel-ready project to a very, very large developer in the area. That guy comes in, and I could write a book on how difficult that was for me, right? He tears up the mountain. He tears up the roads. He brings in utilities at the same time that he's developing, and I'm at the top of this thing trying to just do my little remodel project, trying to get furniture up there. I mean, I got one video somewhere of a Lowe's truck with two dudes who are literally like yee-hawing, as like screaming out the truck as they drive up the mountain trying to deliver furniture to me, right? We didn't have water for the longest time because part of the deal for him was we have to bring in city water. That was the only way they were going to let him do his project, and they had to put me on that city water, which is a great deal for me, but I was at their complete beck and call, right? So like, I'm done with this remodel project. I've got no water. We're trying to rent these things. I've got a cash burn rate of about $5,000, $6,000 a month at that point, and I'm like, I am going to run out of money. So for 4 months, that caused a delay. He finally gets water up there, but in order for him to get water up there, what does he have to do? Cut through all the blacktop, right? So now I got roads that are all tore up, and he goes, oh, yeah, it's not really my responsibility. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I gave you water, right? So there's a $25,000, $30,000 bill I didn't expect to do. Wasn't prepared for it. I had to go to my 401k to do that. I mean, this was a rough situation by the time it was done. We got through it, right? We got through it. And last part of the story is, hey, good news. We get through the end of that project. I keep teaching down at Western Carolina, and I'm finally like, I'm done with this. I can't continue this anymore. And my buddy, who I hired at Butler University, all comes first full circle, calls me up one day and says, hey, man, I'm taking a job at UT. And I'm coming down there. I'm going to live in Maryville. I'm going to be down there this week. Do you want to grab a beer? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I go and grab beer with him, and he's like, I think they're looking for people. You still want to do this? I was like, yeah, kind of done with the whole academia thing after my last experience. You know, the reason that I kind of did real estate in the first place, other than just being shoved into it because I had no options, was I didn't want to be in a position ever again where, you know, you think you're in a safe, secure space by having a job until the one income source that you have gets taken away from you, right? And I was like, I don't ever want to be in that position again. Well, now I've got a portfolio here that hedges some of that risk. And so I'm like, you know what, if it's UT, I'd consider it. That gives me benefits. That gives me a pretty decent income. I can live off of that. The cabins can do what they do. And so I wound up taking a job at UT. So I've been at UT now. This will be my second full year, third year, I guess, being a part of that system over there. I teach accounting over there. A couple days a week, get summer off. Not a bad gig. I still self-manage the properties. And it sounds like a lot, but at the end of the day, I mean, you know, I've got nice new remodeled properties. Don't get me wrong, this is nothing that is passive, but at the end of the day, I only go up there about 1 day a week and kind of deal with the stupid stuff. But I've seen it all, man. I had a mudslide at the cabin. I've had a tree fall on a cabin. I've had, of course, you know, the midnight phone call that the place is backed up and, you know, you can't get a plumber, and so I bought a pressure washer and I got a snake and I go in there and I do what I got to do, and we've done these things, right? I'm trying to get to the point now where everybody kind of asks me what's next. I got a property in Knoxville now, outside of Farragut. I'm going to try to do something there. This is where the county comes in. I'm trying to get something approved to build a larger garage. I have a car problem, by the way. So I'm trying to build a larger garage, build an apartment above that garage, hopefully midterm that thing out. That's kind of my project now. And I've just taken a step back. I mean, after those 4 years, I was pretty darn burned out on the whole thing. I want to just take a year to kind of get back to being me. So you know, try to travel a little bit, meet some friends. I run entirely too much. I've kind of gotten involved in that again and trying to rebuild my life, I guess. Where I'll go from here, I'm not sure. I don't know if I want any more short-term rentals. I still see deals up there. It's not that market is dead. It's not. A deal today looks different than a deal did when I was doing it. Maybe a good deal now pulls 25%, doesn't pull 50, right? But that's still a pretty solid base hit. And, you know, if you're looking at the right stuff, that's the other thing. You got to kind of know what you're looking at now. You didn't back then. Back then, you just had to get your hands on something. Well, up to about 2022, I guess in that space, things started to get pretty thin. Once those margins got thin, you got to know what you're looking at. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm headed. That's my story. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, let's do it. It'd be absolutely epic stuff. How do you do that? You create awesome lighting outside. We do a lot with lighting. I do a lot with colors. We overlay stuff so that you can see the mountains in the background, all that kind of stuff, right? Along with that, the lighting, a big deal. So anytime I've got string lights and some sort of outdoor entertainment space for a small property, that's huge. Fire pit, almost a necessity, I'd say. However, I was scared because I don't want to burn the whole world down, or we'll have one of my guests burn the world down. So I don't do the fire ring ones. I do like a outdoor fireplace kind of a thing. So we've got that in the back of every property. That way it somewhat contains the fire as opposed to just some sort of, we're going to let embers fly all over the place and kill the world. So we do fire pits. Of course, I got a hot tub. That at this point isn't even an amenity. It's just a necessity. Anything that creates uniqueness. The movie theater thing has been a huge thing for me. Every property I've got a movie theater in absolutely kills it. And I think it's just because that's kind of a cute, unique thing that two people, remember, I got couples cabins, right? It's just so cool. Like, they think that it's going to be amazing that we can just sit down and we can cuddle together and we can watch a movie in the movie theater and it looks neat, right? So that's been a big deal, and it's super simple to do. I mean, I think it cost me like a couple grand by the time I put an entertainment system in there and buy a projector and do the things. Not a big deal, right? So the movie theater thing's been big. This new one has a game room in it. I'm not sure that it needs a game room. I think that I did it because, again, part of how you get people in the door is the pictures have to look so cool, right? And this has got really cool stuff in the basement that winds up looking like something that people would want to book. So I think any amenity that you can think of where just sit down with your wife or whoever, I'm single, but whatever, sit down with whoever and be like, hey, if you were, what would be fun to go do if we could go get away for the weekend? And then the other thing is just go look at other properties that are killing it on Airbnb, and you're going to find that these little couples cabins have movie theaters and cute little lighting and all the things, right? We've tried to do a lot of that stuff. I've got green walls at all of them behind the hot tub, just because it's kind of cool. I've got little neon lights at every one of them, right, with the name of the cabin. And so when they turn on the string lights and they hit that, it's got this cool picture in the background. I've got colored lights along the decks, and so it looks inviting and cool in a picture. That's a big deal, right? So it's kind of all together, I guess. Not just amenities, but how you capture the amenities, the lighting, all of it. It seems to matter a lot. Yeah.
I've got two questions. One on the invoice. Do you have a Facebook page for each cabinet?
All right, so this is now, we're getting into kind of what's next, right? So the last 4 years, I mean, I have just been buried, right? Finally got to the point where I was like, all right, they're done. Moved into my house. Now I'm trying to take a breath. But the next thing that I'd like to do is kind of develop the direct booking side of this, along with get my ass in the business every day, right? Because right now I still go up there and fix everything. I'm still kind of very heavily involved. I want to get to the place where we build a system and I'm working on the business, and part of that is building a direct booking. In terms of risk, I have a lot of risk. I bet you 85%, maybe 90% comes from Airbnb right now. And Airbnb changes things like, every day. Every 6 months they've got some update going on, and usually what you probably don't know unless you run a short-term rental is Airbnb is in the tank for the guest in the most part, right? The guest pays 13%, you pay 3%. At the end of the day, they're paying the bills, and so Airbnb tends to default back the guest, which is frustrating as heck for us, but it's just part of the gig, right? So there's a lot of risk in just getting everything from Airbnb. That's where I'd like to go. However, it's not so simple as we're going to build a Facebook page or we're going to build a website and they will come. It is I've got to capture information from the current guests. It is I have to build a social media strategy to somehow develop and drive people to that website. It comes with a lot more effort than simply if you build it, they will be here, right?
And that was the reason I was asking is some of the smaller property owners that have a page, just post like normal post, but they put a QR code in there and it's like, hey,
discount thing.
Share a photo of your experience and tag us, and then people start actually doing that.
Yeah.
And then other people seeing.
Yeah, it'd be great. I mean, we thought about that with the viewing tower. I was like, man, I need to put a QR code next to the viewing tower. People are taking pictures, selfies, whatever it is. Now all of a sudden they can share that stuff. So it's all thoughts. It's just, I got to have time somewhere in here, and I have a job and run these suckers, and, yeah. Cool. Yeah, it'd be great.
The other one I had was you had mentioned that property that you went to, and the owner only let you walk into the vacant one and didn't let you see the other ones that weren't.
Yeah.
For someone in that situation now, based off
Yeah, there were people in there. I couldn't go in.
And the owners didn't want to work with them to get a temporary.
Look, man, I knew we were buying a shit show. I knew it, right? I knew it from day one. So I was like, does it really matter what I see when I go in there? I know we're going to have to rebuild this entire darn thing. The good news for us was I did know, I could tell, that structurally they were in pretty decent shape. Now, not everything, right? Like I walked in one of them, we turned the water on, and it rained from every dang wall and ceiling that it could rain from, right? And my dad's in there, shut it off, shut it off, shut it off, right? And we're flooding the place out because it had copper piping in there, and you know, if you remember, we had a freeze probably back in 21, 22 over Christmas or right around there. I had the cabin shut down, but there was still water sitting in the pipe, and I'm assuming that they got a pinhole in some of that copper piping. Of course, couldn't find a plumber. Me and Dad went in there, hacked the wall apart, we redid it. Not a big deal, but there was stuff like that was going to happen. But structurally, they were on a slab. They weren't lofted off the side of a mountain with a big old, you know, we didn't have any of that kind of stuff. And so I knew that it was basically just going to be a pretty decent remodel. And trust me, man, I got in one of them, like, we hauled, I can't remember, it was 2 or 3 dumpsters in a 450 square foot cabin. You can imagine, of just trash coming out of that place. They left food inside the refrigerators. You can imagine how that smelled. So you'd walk into these places and the smell would just hit you. There was devil symbols carved into the wood on some of them. We had tumbleweeds of dog hair. I mean, I'm not kidding, tumbleweeds like this. Bathtubs were so bad we couldn't even get them clean. We just had to knock them out and basically put in new showers and stuff like that. So, but I kind of knew that. Like I kind of knew that walking in. I was prepared for it. It was what it was, and you know, not a big deal. Now, for somebody who needs to do that, I'm sure that you can talk with the owner and make it happen. I just didn't press because I didn't feel like it was going to be a deal breaker for me. So, yeah.
I would say, in my experience, some of the reason where there's opportunity is because those people have no management of the situation. They've got no ability. They don't want to let the tenants know they're selling the property. So it's like not unusual. Like the reason you're getting the deal is because you have the nightmare of dealing with the tenants and like untangling that knot.
I will say my only caveat there was I told dude, I was like, look, man, I don't need to get in it, whatever, but you're getting the people out of there. I'm not dealing with that, right? So he did. He cashed for keyed a lot of them, got him into an apartment building that he luckily owned. So we had him out by the time I closed on it. I just had to deal with the aftermath. All right. Do you have a question? What's up?
Yes, question and kind of statement, and I'm hoping to make benefit others as well. So, personally, I probably stayed at least 20 Airbnb, VRBOs, if not more in my lifetime as a guest. One of them is Northern Michigan. We stayed there, and then, you know, this is a place that's only used 3 months of the year pretty much. And the very next year, we get an email from the owner who found us on Airbnb, and we're on his preferred client list because we didn't jack the place up, and we talked to his neighbors who were his property managers. And to this day, which is 6 years later, or every spring I get an email from this guy offering to rent his cottage at like 15% less than what Airbnb is. So I'm sure there's rules against that, but is that a
not really. I mean, if they contact me in Airbnb, I'm host. Like, they're host. Like, their terms of service basically said, if you find me an Airbnb, like, that's that. Right? They message me inside Airbnb. You inquire about the property. I'm not trying to direct you off of it. I got a lot of them that'll message me and say, well, you know, can we do something outside of this? And I mean, Big Brother's watching, right? Yeah. But after they've rented from you, fair game. Like, at that point, I can capture information in a variety of different ways. I can do that, build database, and send you an email directly from there. And that's mostly how the direct booking thing, I think, starts. You start getting a clientele that shows up. You then capture that information and send them on, right? So, yeah, that's okay. You can do that. Yeah.
Just curious. I mean, I'm an electrical contractor as well, and the last thing I want is guys to take side jobs from me. But like you said, I've heard horror stories. The property management company I use can't stand Airbnb. They survived almost 20 years without using any of them, but you keep up with everyone.
Yeah. I hate them and I love them. I mean, they're 90% of my business, right? So, you know, I hate them and love them.
So, anyways, just a thought.
Do you put your properties on just Airbnb or Airbnb and VRBO?
I started with Airbnb. I had Vrbo for a while. Vrbo at the time was very frustrating for a lot of reasons. And I wasn't getting much from it. I actually had a meeting with Vrbo. So this is kind of interesting, I guess, for those of you that are kind of getting into this. Airbnb's changed their algorithm over time. This now is, by the way, a thing that I have to think about that rules my life is algorithms. I never thought I even knew what that word was until I started doing this. But just like anything, right, where you rank inside the search matters, and how you do that is by playing the algorithm. So gotten pretty good at the Airbnb algorithm. I sat down with Vrbo because I said, man, I don't know what's going on, but I can't figure this out. I can't get any traction inside Vrbo. And they said, well, you've got to have 15 reviews. At 15 reviews, then it starts to go. And I'm like, okay, well, that's like the guy who's coming out of college with no experience. How the hell does that work? I got to get a job to get experience. I got to get people in the door to get reviews. How does this work, right? They actually told me, and I cannot believe this, but they actually told me inside that meeting, Airbnb would ban you for life if you did this. Get one of your friends, rent it to them for the night, have them leave a review. You got to get to 15. I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. So I told them, I said, look, man, I said, Airbnb is going to kick your butt, because what happens is, now the old algorithm, they've changed it a little bit now. It's not quite the same. But they used to give you a new listing bump. So you would list top, number one, first page, when you launched the listing. They've tempered that a little bit. Now it takes a few reviews to get it to climb into that first page. They give you a new listing bump. Now think about that. If I'm starting a property, I get this new listing bump, and if I know what I'm doing with that algorithm, I will keep that property inside the first page forever. And there's enough demand inside Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge that if you're ranking in the first page, you're going to get booked, right? So I would keep that thing booked enough that Vrbo could never fill the calendar. I was like, and so therefore, you're going to get your butts kicked by Airbnb no matter what, if I'm good at this. If I'm not, then there's some room, right? So I was like, that's a flaw in your system. It's kind of funny because I was sitting in the room with a bunch of people who were old school. They'd done this since the 80s, kind of a thing, been on HomeAway that became Vrbo. They're the ones that had all the clout inside of Vrbo because they had thousands of reviews, and that is what their algorithm drives off of. Not so much quality, just flat out number, quantity of reviews seems to be the big driver inside Vrbo. So for me, I've spent most of my life with Airbnb because I figured out the algorithm, got really good at it, and they fill the calendar. Still got them on Vrbo. Don't get a lot from it. My plan is, along with direct, because this is now my issue, right? I'm like, all right, we're not diversified. I've got everything coming from one place. I'd like to diversify this a little bit. How do I do that? Vrbo, Booking.com, direct bookings. And I've got to understand and learn those algorithms. I've gotten pretty good to understand Vrbo now. Need to understand Booking. Talked to a guy the other day who's doing pretty well with that. I wind up doing something there. And I think I know what we got to do for the direct side. But it's just a matter of me sitting down and doing it. So, yeah.
And one for like new self.
Do you have a question? I thought you had a question before we asked service.
Yeah.
I have a question. Brian, obviously you started with zero and really built it in 3 years.
3.5, yeah, 4 years. Yeah.
Basically to a point where you now have a system getting there. If you knew what you know today, 3 years ago, how would you build this system? How would you have done it?
I don't know if I would have done things a lot different. There are things at the time, of course, you think about. It's more so now. It's like, what do I do now, right? Now, would I have done it again? People ask me that all the time. Would you do this again? I'm glad I did it once. I don't want to ever do that again, ever, right? But I think the big thing of kind of where do I go from here is more what it is. You know, we did what we had to do. We got through it. The hard part of it, which is the remodel part of it, I wish I could have hired a contractor. Reality is we had the money, right? We had the money. Things worked out the way they worked out for a reason. So we did it that way. Where you're at now is when you get to a point, and for me that point is right about where I'm at. 9 properties, maybe 10. on smaller properties. It's probably 5 to 6 on larger properties. Maybe not. Everybody's got a different tolerance. But once you get kind of to that point, you're at a tipping point. And for me, I'm right there. It's like if I get much more involved in this, get many more properties, now I really have to have ironclad systems, meaning a statement of operating procedures, and I'm going to have to hire somebody. That's the only way that this kind of works. So now all of a sudden you can't buy one more property. I've got to buy 2, 3, 4 more properties to be able to pay for the system that I'm going to have to develop to manage them from here, right? So I'm kind of at the place now where I'm a single guy. Kind of got enough for me, you know? I mean, I'd like to do more, but at the end of the day, I don't want to cause myself. I did all this for freedom. I don't want to keep locking myself to a point where I don't have it anymore, right? So I'm like, how much do I want to expand to continue that? And I don't know the answer to that yet. I think I'm still just taking a year to kind of back away. But I don't have major like, man, this was flawed. I wish I'd have done this. There is one thing that I guess I can say that with. So we bought this property, the 6 at the top of the mountain. I knew nothing about HOAs, PUDs, any of that, right? And so the city of Pigeon Forge had a PUD document, planned unit development document, on file, along with all the regulations that came with the CCRs that went with that, which is essentially the HOA. Well, at that point, when I started this, before the developer got in there, I had the ability to craft that thing the way that I wanted to craft it, which would have been advantageous to me. But I didn't know anything, right? And so if I could go back and do it again, that is the one thing that I would change. I would craft that document differently right up front, because what's happened is the developer then came in. Of course, he has teams of attorneys. They knew what to do with that document, and so they built it and stacked it in their favor. And now all of a sudden we've been playing catch up on that ever since, which has been frustrating. But you know, in terms of how we did the in disorganized chaos as it could, and now the question is, where do we go from here? And I don't think I've fully answered that yet. So, yeah.
Self-managing, how are you determining your hourly rates? Are you using a software, a platform that helps you calculate against other properties, or are you just picking this seasonal? Because I figure that would be good information for people getting into that if they're going to self-manage.
This is a good question. All right, so there are pricing tools out there, and they work kind of like an airline pricing system or a concert pricing system, right? If it senses demand, it increases the price. If it doesn't, it decreases the price. Now, here's the thing that they don't tell you. You can't just set it and let it ride, right? So this all becomes very intertwined with the Airbnb algorithm. The Airbnb, you got to think about Airbnb, how they started and what they are, right? Airbnb starts as we're renting out rooms inside of a property, then we're going to properties, and we're going to beat prices on hotels. One of the big levers that you can pull inside that algorithm is price, right? Change price a little bit, it changes where you rank inside that thing quite a bit. So I do this in concert with the algorithm. I try to get things that I know will pull the levers that I need to pull to get that thing to rank where it needs to rank, and then the final tweak becomes pricing. And it is probably the most important thing that you will do once you get the property where it needs to be, get the listing where it needs to be, get it up and running, you got the reviews going, is you're pulling the pricing lever all the time. I'm looking at pricing probably 2, 3, 4 times a week. You know, it's not a big deal. Grab my cup of coffee in the morning, take a look at it for a half hour, tweak some pricing, move on down the road. But if you miss it, if you miss the booking window, and this is especially important for larger properties that have longer booking windows, my properties will still book even if I miss it a little bit. I'll just book them at a lower rate. But if you miss it on a bigger property with a group of 16 people that's trying to book a cabin, and now all of a sudden your prices go way down and the cost structure on those things significantly higher. And oh, by the way, I'm now at a lower price point that more people can access, and that tends to bring with it problems, right? Where I don't really have that because I got a 1-bedroom property, and at the end of the day, $20, I'll take about anything. We'll just get them in, right? The reality is they can't screw those things up too much. Knock on wood. I mean, they try, but they haven't done a lot. We haven't had parties. It's 450 square feet. You can't do that, right? So at the end of the day, like, I am pulling the pricing lever in concert with where does this thing rank. And it's really driven by that for me. Like, if I can get this thing to rank in the top page, 2 pages, usually I kind of set the trap and wait. And typically, as long as there's demand, the property photographs well, it's got good reviews, it leaps off the page to somebody who wants to book it, and it's in those first 2 pages. Guess what? If you look at the trends on the way people book, they ain't looking past page 5. They don't need to, right? So the reality is you're going to probably pick something up inside of there. So I do a lot of my pricing based off of, let's tweak this thing to get it to where it needs to be in terms of the algorithm, and then let's wait. And typically that does it. I price stuff out quite a bit. One of the big drivers in the algorithm now is, I've noticed, far out bookings. So I'll take a look at a 6-month window and say, all right, what I noticed early on, especially this year, was this was a tougher year. I missed the booking window, and I was playing catch-up in March and April a lot because I expected there to be demand. Tariff thing happened. There wasn't demand. I got caught with my pants down a little bit and was like, all right, now we're playing catch-up. Well, I missed the booking window, and again, they'll get booked, but my rates were terrible. They were like February-type rates in March, in spring break time, right? Prime time. And so I figured out real quick, I was like, okay, this is going to be one of those years. All right, let's book them out. Well, when you get them booked out in Airbnb, the algorithm picks that up and decides that it's a popular property. Now, the way all these algorithms work for social media or any of these type of companies is the more popular you are, we're going to send you more stuff, right? So they're going to rank you higher. It's just like how does a viral cat video become a viral cat video, right? It gets shared and it gets liked, and the algorithm senses this is popular, and when it does, it keeps sending it to more and more places. And so it just snowballs, right? So for me, I was like, all right, let's get this thing booked out further. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to look at where this thing ranks. And most people use a far out pricing premium. They're trying to jack the prices up because it's further out. And I'm like, you know what? This year, I just want to be booked. If we're booked, we're going to be okay, because if I miss the booking, miss that window, now all of a sudden I'm going to wind up at a lower rate, right? So let's figure out what a normal good rate for me would be that is lower than everybody else. I look attractive. I'm on the first page. I got these things booked out for June, July, and August, most of August, way back in May, right? So because of that, so I'll try to price those things out for a window, and I don't try to be picky with it, or I don't try to be greedy with it at the end of the day. And because of that, we've wound up picking up a lot of bookings in these types of times. Like when there's demand, October, I'm not as worried. When there's not demand, I'm going to try to book these things out and see if we can't, again, that does something in the algorithm, helps me, and I kind of know that we didn't miss the booking. Even if I left $20 on the table, let me put it this way. With a 1-bedroom property, typical night, 120 to 190 bucks, something like that, right? So if I'm on the low end of that scale, let's say I'm at 150 bucks. Man, that's not a great weekend rate. But if I don't book the property at all, I lose out on 150 bucks each night. If I do book the property, we lost out on 30, 40. Who cares? Get it booked, right? That's been my kind of driver. And with 1-bedroom properties, I can do that. With a 6-bedroom property, you start getting into a danger zone. So not only are you losing money on the booking, but you're also bringing in people that cost you a headache. There is strategically a reason I chose 1-bedroom properties. Mm-hmm. Again, the market was the market. It was doing what it was doing from a saturation standpoint. I wanted to stay away from that. And also, keep it simple, stupid. I don't want headache, right? I used to be a waiter and a server. Anybody bartender? You guys ever done that? Yeah? Okay, so did you like the 2 top tables or did you like the parties? I like the 2 top tables. I loved them. They didn't say a damn thing to me. They were easy. They were out of there in half hour, 45 minutes, right? And I would turn those things over. And I made a bunch of money. As opposed to, they suck up my entire night. Yeah, I make money, but man, I've worked my butt off running around for this party, right? I don't like that. And strategically, I'd rather deal with HVAC systems and roofs than people. When all of mine are full, I've got 18 people. A 5-bedroom property has 14, 15, something like that sitting inside that thing at one time. And there's a group mechanism that starts going on inside of there where they get mad at each other or they get mad and then all of a sudden the whole stay sucks and it's my fault. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that, right? And moms and kids, like, so one of the deals of why I took 2 bedrooms and made them 1-bedrooms, I had 2 properties next to each other. This one was a 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom with a loft. This one was a little tiny, office thing that we converted into a cabin, right? This one got literally 18 years old, and I don't care. Like, I put 18-year-olds in there all the time. Their money's green, whatever. Like, 18 to 30. That's kind of the market here, right? Single couples, that's them. This one's mom, dad, 2 kids. We had to go up a winding mountain road to get there. Everybody in this cabin with mom, dad, and 2 kids complains about the road and tells me how awful it is. This cabin that's literally next to it, nobody says a word, right? So one of my motivations was we're getting into 1-bedroom type revenues with this 2-bedroom anyway, because there's so darn many of them. And I don't want to deal with the headache of mom, dad, and 2 kids, and the 2 kids run around and break my stuff, right? So I finally just said, the heck with it. We took the beds out of the loft. I made a movie theater up there, like had worked in everything else that I had done. That property was the one that did $84,000, I think it was last year, which is literally like top 1% of 1-bedrooms. Mm-hmm. So I came with more revenue, less headache. Nobody complained about the road anymore. My life got easier. Again, I like roofs and HVAC systems because when they break, I go replace them as opposed to I got to deal with people. Brooke, on the other hand, loves dealing with people. And so she does that stuff, and she's a really good host, and she really cares about all of her guests. I am the exact opposite. Like, get me out of it. I don't want to deal with it, right? That's just me. 2 top table, turn them over. So.
Where do we see your handiwork?
I don't know. I guess I can bring it up on Airbnb and show you some of these properties. Yeah, I can do that real quick. Yeah, you can Google them, but I mean the easiest, I'll just log in Airbnb and probably look at it real quick.
Do they own these too?
Yeah, that's the other thing. A lot of 1-bedrooms, people try to jam 4 people in them, but then becomes mom, dad, and 2 kids, right? So my strategy has been 2-person occupancy, max 3. Mom, dad, maybe 1 small child, or, college kids that came in with 3 people, and that's that. And for the most part, that's worked out really well for me. I don't have king beds in a lot of them. It's another thing. Everybody says you got to have a king bed. I don't. It's probably cost me some bookings. But at the end of the day, like we're still 90-some% occupied. So it hasn't killed me everywhere.
Thank you, Brian.
Right?
Yeah. Me and Nathan got another hour's worth of stuff to talk about, but we're not going to do it tonight. I wanted you guys to know that if you ever have a question about STRs, tell you a little bit about what I do. I have 7 growth strategies. And out of those 7 growth strategies, what happens is a lot of the stuff he talked about tonight. If you want to do management, I have 3 programs. I have a DIY program where I'll actually help you set up all your systems, all your processes, all your ops, set up these algorithms he's talking about, set up all your pricing structure, all that, help you onboard everything. I have a done with you program. So if you get through the DIY, you need to handle somebody to hold your hand for 6 or 7 months, we do that. If you need somebody to do full end-to-end management, although I'm a real estate agent, I have a lot of systems, a lot of processes in place. I'm also partnered with one of the biggest hospitality companies in the world. I serve them there. I'm an investor in their company. I'm an advisor for their company. And I also do a lot of work with those guys. So if you need a back-end system plug into, we can get you set up on that. But in the full end-to-end service, we take it. Brian likes it. He likes it. Brooke likes it. Who else self-manages in here? I know some other folks do. Yeah. Terrell loves it. Terrell's great at it. He's done my podcast. He talks a lot about the guest experience. The big thing with management is that you've got to have a plan before you get started. Most every property you look at has some sort of level of makeover. If you want to do the makeover, when you're sitting down with your real estate agent, we're not like this. Okay? I hope you're not like this. I'm pretty sure you're not. But a lot of times what will happen is when the young agent or someone gets on the phone and you call them and Nathan says, hey, I just approved you for $1.5 million. First thing that commission breath kicks in, he's like, let's go find you something for $1.5 million. Never takes in consideration anything else. On the ops side of it, that's where I came from, the ops side. I was a cleaner. I was a stager. I did all that stuff, okay? I truly built my business from the ground up. So everything I do today is built around the guest experience, the guest satisfaction. The biggest challenge that I see in most situations, by the time they get to my short-term rental rescue program, which I've had 4 calls this week, people that are trying to get out and they don't know how. Some people we can help, some people we can't. The problem is they didn't think about any of that when they were buying the property. They didn't factor in maintenance costs. They didn't factor in any of this other stuff we talked about. The makeover. Every property needs a makeover. You can go in one right now and it'd be set up perfectly, but it's not your perfect. It's not what you want it to be. It may not have a good guest experience. So I have a 7M strategy that I was going to cover tonight, but I'll cover that next time. The biggest challenge that I see, though, is So many people don't do the due diligence, which I always love hearing your story, because he did sit down and count the cost before he got started. On top of that, if you want to self-manage, that's great. But it's too late sometimes after you get in 3 to 6 months and you get a bunch of bad reviews and all that stuff's wrong. That's why I'm here to help you. I'm a consultant, I'm a coach, I'm a real estate agent, and a property manager. I'm not here to sell you anything tonight, but if you have questions, Nick will tell you. It's been about, 2 hours ago the other day? What did we talk about?
I'll sell you
Okay.
some stuff.
Yeah. Now we'll sell you property all day long. But our goal is not always transactional. So when you come to these events, I don't want anybody selling from the stage. But I want you to understand that we're here for you. We're here to help you. And when you get ready, make the call. Now we'll sell you something. We'll sell you something all day long. Justin will tell you straight up, we're not transactional people. Our team is not transactional people. The folks that work together, we're not here to promote CASA, but we are not transactional in the way we approach things.
I worked with this athlete, and his wife was on a Wheaties box. They're both retired athletes. We got done with the transaction. It was very nice. It was very humbling. He said, "You're the best agent I've ever worked with." I said, "Oh, really? What did I do?" He said, "You're the only agent that told me not to buy something."
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a ridiculously low. You know what I mean? I was like, at the time, I was pretty broke. I was like, I'm broke before you came along. I'm not paying my bills. Like, I'm broke, whatever. I wouldn't buy this property. It's not worth $1 million. You should not buy this property. You need to buy a sick property on Tunnel Bluff Mountain.
Right.
I think the bar's pretty low, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think the most challenging thing about this is people don't know where to go. We want to be trusted advisors. That's why we're here. And so next time I'll talk about my 7M strategy. Me and Nathan maybe do a little bit of talking about some things I want to talk to him about. You understand the loan process. We've talked a little bit about that last time. But the thing is there's so many opportunities for you to buy out there. The thing is, you just got to know your numbers. You got to know what's going on. Too many people come to me when it's too late. I was on the phone with 4 people this week that are hurting. And it's not the Smokies. They're in a different market. They're completely out of our market. And they're hurting because they didn't do their due diligence and they didn't spend down and put together a plan. I'll show you my 7M strategy at some point, and there's actually a couple bonuses that go with it. But we're thinking about doing some mastermind calls because these can go a little deep. Would people be interested in that if we want to do one of those a month? Me and Nathan have talked about it. So,
Would you like us to do that for a month's time, like in 2 weeks?
would that be cool? Y'all want to do an STR mastermind kind of call? Okay, cool.
And I will say that the clients that I've worked with recently converting, the last 2 specifically, when I were talking to them, they said, I wish I'd have contacted converting property management when I first was getting this property foreclosed.
Right.
They said, I had headaches, met him, I don't have the headaches.
Right.
And that's the one thing I've always noticed in SDR clients. When they're coming from him, they're mentioning his name. When they're working with someone else, they don't really know that person. Like everybody I've worked with him knows
Right.
him.
I will say, people think, especially because of the COVID era, 2020, 2021, reality was you could stick an outhouse out there and you're probably going to make $100,000. That's just the way it was. You didn't have to be good at this. You got to be good at this now. It's every aspect of the management, from the listing, development of the listing, the pictures, the whole thing. You've got to be really good at this. And if you're not, you better look at farming it out to somebody else. That's just the reality of it because it's hard.